Chapter 1. The Text That Changed Everything. Miles Donovan had built a career defending monsters. For 28 years in Boston courtrooms, he had stood beside men the public already hated. He had listened to prosecutors describe brutality in clinical detail. He had watched juries flinch at photographs. And then he had risen, calm, surgical, and dismantled certainty piece by piece. He knew how criminals lied. He knew how innocence sounded. He knew when someone was afraid. He could see it in the pulse at a man's throat, in the way a witness held eye contact half a second too long, in the tremor buried beneath rehearsed outrage. He had made a profession out of reading the fault lines in people. What he didn't know, what he never imagined, was that betrayal would arrive as a text message. It began on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other. The courtroom in Suffolk County was packed, air humming with whispered commentary. Miles stood before the jury, silver at his temples, charcoal suit immaculate, voice smooth and controlled. "Mr. Halpern," he said to the prosecution's star witness, "you testified that you were certain it was my client you saw leaving the warehouse at 11:42 p.m., correct?" The witness swallowed. "Yes. Certain." Miles tilted his head slightly. "Beyond doubt. Yes." Miles paced once before the jury box. "And yet your phone records show you were on a call at 11:41 p.m. that lasted 4 minutes." The witness blinked. Miles lifted a document. "A call in which you told your girlfriend you were too far across town to get involved." Silence rippled. The witness's composure cracked, just slightly. Miles saw it instantly. He pressed forward. "You weren't there, Mr. Halpern. You weren't anywhere near that warehouse. You were constructing a story after the fact." Objection. Sustained. The judge interrupted, but the damage was done. The jury was watching the witness now, not Miles. By the time court adjourned for lunch, the prosecution's case was bleeding credibility. Stewart, his law partner, clapped him on the shoulder in the hallway. "You eviscerated him." Miles adjusted his cufflinks. "He eviscerated himself." "You look pale," Stewart added, studying him more closely. "You good?" "I'm fine." It was automatic. Dismissive. He had been feeling a tightness in his chest all week. Indigestion, he told himself. Stress. 52 wasn't old. He drove back to his office overlooking Boston Harbor. The autumn sky was gray, the water restless. Beverly, his assistant of 17 years, stood as he entered. "You have a 3 o'clock with Henderson." "Push it to 4, he said, loosening his tie. "I need 10 minutes. He stepped into his private office and shut the door. The room felt too warm. He placed his briefcase on the desk and pressed his palm to his sternum. The tightness sharpened. A band tightening. He inhaled slowly. It didn't ease. He crossed toward the window, thinking air might help, but the world tilted slightly. His vision narrowed, as though someone had dimmed the edges of reality. He braced himself against the desk. A sudden, crushing pressure exploded through his chest, radiating down his left arm, into his jaw. His breath hitched. Not indigestion, not stress. His knees buckled. He hit the marble floor hard, the sound echoing in the office. The ringing began then, a high, piercing tone that drowned out everything else. He tried to reach for the desk. His fingers barely obeyed. Through the haze, he heard Beverly's voice outside the door. "Miles!" A beat. Then the handle rattled. "Miles!" The door burst open. Her gasp cut through the ringing. "Call 911. Now!" Footsteps. Shouting. Someone kneeling beside him. "Stay with me, Mr. Donovan." He wanted to respond. He couldn't draw enough air. The ceiling lights blurred into white streaks. The world narrowed to a pinprick of sound. And then darkness swallowed him whole. He surfaced to brightness. Blinding, sterile brightness. His chest felt like it had been cleaved open and sewn back together with wire. Each breath was a measured ache. Machines surrounded him, steady beeping, rhythmic hissing. A ventilator tube tugged at his throat. He tried to move. Pain answered. A nurse leaned into view. Young. Focused. Calm eyes. "Mr. Donovan, you're in recovery. Surgery went well. You had a major coronary blockage. Triple bypass." Her voice was steady, reassuring. He blinked once. "How long?" He rasped, the words scraping his throat. "Several hours. You're stable now." "Stable." He processed the word clinically. Alive. He scanned the room slowly. White walls. Curtains half drawn. Monitors glowing green. No familiar face. Your wife? He managed. The nurse hesitated just a fraction too long. There was no one here when you came out of surgery. But we contacted the number on file. Miles absorbed that. No one here. He had gone under a scalpel. His chest cracked open. His heart stopped and restarted. And Veronica had not been in the waiting room. He told himself she might be stuck in traffic. Phone off. Unreachable. There were reasonable explanations. There were always explanations. The nurse adjusted his four. You should rest. He closed his eyes. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time felt detached from meaning. Then a vibration. Soft. Mechanical. He turned his head slightly. His phone lay on the side table beside the bed. The nurse noticed. Do you want it? He nodded faintly. She placed it in his hand. The screen glowed painfully bright against his adjusting vision. One new message. From Veronica. A strange calm settled over him as he opened it. We're off to Europe. Don't bother calling us. He read it once. Then again. The word us. Not confusion. Not fear. Not apology. Finality. Us. Dominic Walsh. Her personal trainer. Miles stared at the message without emotion. The monitor beside him beeped steadily. He had survived the heart attack, but his marriage had not. He didn't reply. He didn't call. He simply began thinking. And when Miles Donovan began thinking, lives unraveled. Chapter 2. The Quiet Cutoff. The machines beside Miles' hospital bed beeped with patient indifference. A steady rhythm. A measured sound. Proof that his heart, repaired, stitched, forced back into compliance, was functioning again. He lay against elevated pillows, threaded into his arm, chest wrapped in tight, surgical binding. Each breath felt deliberate, controlled, painful, but pain was irrelevant. His phone rested in his hand. The message still glowed faintly in his memory. We're off to Europe. Don't bother calling us. He did not reread it. He did not need to. Instead, he opened his banking app. The nurse assigned to him, Ryan Lambert, according to the badge clipped neatly at his chest, noticed the movement. You should be resting, Ryan said calmly, adjusting the drip rate. I am, Miles replied evenly. His thumb moved across the screen. Joint checking account. $2,487,113.46. Joint savings. $6,903,882.09. Investment liquidity pool. Accessible. He began transferring, one account at a time, into pre-established trust Veronica had no administrative authority over, into private holdings structured long before their marriage deteriorated, structures he had built for tax protection, not betrayal protection. But they would serve both purposes now. Ryan glanced over, curiosity flickering. Work emergency? You could call it that. Transfer complete. Transfer complete. Transfer complete. He watched the balances drain from shared ownership into controlled silence. His breathing remained even as he moved. No spike in heart rate. No tremor. Just method. Next. Credit services. He dialed the premium banking concierge line. A woman answered immediately. Mr. Donovan, good afternoon. How may I assist you? I need to terminate all secondary cardholders effective immediately. There was a pause. Mrs. Donovan's cards as well? Yes. May I ask if this is temporary? No, a brief clicking of keys. Understood. Platinum and Reserve card are now canceled. Replacement cards can be issued if needed. They won't be. He ended the call. Then he opened his email. Confirmation of hotel reservations in Paris. The Ritz suite overlooking Place Vendôme. 2 weeks prepaid. Cancel. The refund notification appeared seconds later. Next. Airline portal. First class round trip, Boston to Paris. Cancel. He imagined the moment, somewhere over the Atlantic, champagne in hand, assuming financial continuity. The moment the card would decline. The moment the hotel suite would vanish. He felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not anger. Just equilibrium restored. He scrolled further down his financial dashboard. Standing monthly transfers. Theo. $18,000 per month. Labeled. Business support. Theo Donovan, Veronica's younger brother, had opened an Italian restaurant 3 years ago. It had never been profitable. Miles had never commented on the silent withdrawals. He simply covered them. Until now, he tapped the recurring transfer. Cancel. Pamela. $12,500 per quarter. Private school tuition for her twins. Cancel. Monthly stipend to Veronica's mother. Cancel. Vacation property maintenance fees. Cancel. He paused briefly, not because of doubt, but because of completeness. He searched every automated outflow connected to her and severed it. Ryan returned with a cup of water and held it steady while Miles took a small sip. "You're remarkably calm," Ryan observed. "I've had practice." "In what?" "In separating emotion from action." Ryan studied him for a moment. "Most people don't schedule financial restructures the day after bypass surgery. Most people don't leave their spouses during surgery. That earns silence." Miles opened his contacts list. Veronica. Block contact. Confirm. Dominic Walsh. Block contact. Confirm. He didn't hesitate. He didn't draft a message. He didn't threaten. Silence would speak more clearly than outrage ever could. He placed the phone down on the tray table, folded his hands over the hospital blanket. The monitor continued its steady beep. An hour passed. Then 2. Then his phone began vibrating again. Unknown number. He let it ring. It rang again. Different number. He answered this time. "Theo," came the voice immediately, sharp and panicked. "What the hell just happened?" Miles closed his eyes briefly. "Be specific." "The transfer didn't clear. Payroll hits tomorrow." "Did the bank flag something?" "No, what do you mean no?" "It means the transfer was discontinued." Silence. "You're joking." "No, you can't just cut me off without warning." "I can. You know I'm mid-renovation. I've got staff. I got suppliers. You have a business. You're going to let it collapse over a misunderstanding between you and Veronica?" Miles' tone remained even. "This has nothing to do with misunderstanding. Your sister made a decision. So did I. This is vindictive." "No," Miles corrected softly. "This is administrative." Theo swore under his breath. "She told me you were overreacting." "I'm not reacting." He ended the call. The phone rang again almost immediately. "Pamela." He declined it. It rang again. He answered. "Miles," she began, voice already trembling with indignation. "The school just emailed me. They said the tuition wire didn't go through." "That's correct. You've paid it for 6 years. I won't be continuing. This is about Veronica, isn't it? You two had a fight, and now the kids are collateral damage." "No, then what is it?" "A boundary." Her voice sharpened. "You're punishing us. I'm restructuring my finances." "You're unbelievable." "I've been very believable for a long time." She inhaled sharply. "Veronica said you'd calm down. She shouldn't rely on that." He hung up again. Minutes later, her mother. He stared at the name before answering. "Miles," she said without greeting, "I don't know what's gotten into you, but this cruelty, it's not cruelty. You've always taken care of this family, and I no longer will. Because of a mistake? Because of a choice." There was a pause, a shift in tone. "You're ill. You shouldn't be making decisions like this. I'm very clear. You'll regret this." "No," he said quietly. "I won't." He ended the call. The phone continued vibrating intermittently over the next hour. He stopped answering. Eventually, the call slowed, then stopped. The hospital room returned to its mechanical quiet. Ryan entered again, checking vitals. "Family drama?" "Former family." Ryan adjusted the monitor leads. "You sure you want that kind of stress right now?" Miles looked at the ceiling. "I don't feel stressed." And it was true. He felt something else. A precise alignment of cause and effect. If she had chosen us, then she had chosen to stand on her own. He felt no rage, only clarity. If she had chosen us, then she had chosen to stand on her own. Chapter 3, Strategic Withdrawal. On the 3rd morning after surgery, the cardiologist stood at the foot of Miles Donovan's hospital bed with a clipboard and a look that suggested rehearsed patience. "You're not cleared for discharge," Dr. Hensley said carefully. "Your blood pressure is still fluctuating. You need monitored rest." Miles adjusted himself upright despite the pull of sutures across his sternum. Define monitored: continuous observation, limited exertion, controlled stress. I can replicate that environment elsewhere. This isn't a negotiation. Miles held the doctor's gaze. Courtroom calm. Measured silence. You stabilized my heart. I'm grateful, but I won't be staying. Dr. Hensley exhaled slowly. Most men who've just had a triple bypass are terrified. I'm not most men. That's exactly the problem. Ryan Lambert stood quietly near the four-stand, watching the exchange. He didn't interrupt, didn't take sides, just observed. After several more minutes of firm resistance, liability waivers were signed. Instructions were repeated twice. Prescriptions handed over. You leave against medical advice, Dr. Hensley said at the door. You assumed the risk. I always do. By noon, Miles was dressed in tailored slacks and a cashmere overcoat that concealed the stiffness in his posture. Each step required discipline. His body felt foreign, heavy, guarded, recently invaded. But his mind was sharp. The driver opened the car door carefully. Home, sir. Miles paused only briefly. No, he gave a different address. The Winthrop Hotel. The house in Beacon Hill had been purchased 12 years earlier. Restored brick. Iron balconies. Imported marble. Veronica had chosen the chandeliers herself. It was no longer neutral territory. As the car moved through Boston traffic, Miles stared out at the gray harbor beyond the skyline. He did not feel displaced. He felt repositioned. The Winthrop rose above the waterfront like polished steel and glass. Discreet. Expensive. Private. The concierge straightened instantly when he entered. Mr. Donovan, we were informed of your arrival. I require the harbor suite. Long term, of course. Within minutes, he was escorted to the private elevator. The suite door opened to sweeping floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking restless Atlantic water. Clean lines. Minimalist decor. No shared memories embedded in the walls. Perfect. He stepped inside slowly. The room smelled new. Uncontaminated. The concierge hesitated. Will Mrs. Donovan be joining you? No, a single word. Flat. The man nodded and retreated without further inquiry. Miles moved toward the window and rested his hand lightly against the glass. The water churned below. Controlled chaos. A knock sounded behind him. Ryan stood in the doorway, duffel slung over one shoulder. You weren't joking, Ryan said. You really left. I don't remain in compromised environments. Ryan stepped inside. You hire me for in-home monitoring. This qualifies. It does. Ryan placed his bag down. You're aware this is unconventional. So, is poisoning someone with stress? Ryan's expression sharpened slightly. You think stress caused the heart attack? I think negligence did. Mine. Ryan studied him. You'll need medication on schedule. Restricted movement. No sudden strain. I need observation and documentation. That sounds less like recovery and more like preparation. It's both. Ryan didn't argue further. He moved efficiently through the suite, identifying the best location for medical equipment, checking outlets, ensuring emergency access. You trust me quickly, Ryan said after a moment. I trust competence. And if I disappoint you, you won't. There was no arrogance in the statement. Just assessment. Later that afternoon, Beverly arrived. 17 years of loyalty carried in a leather portfolio and an expression of controlled fury. They're calling the office, she said without preamble. Her brother showed up. Loud. Security? Removed him. Good. She placed the portfolio on the table and opened it. I started pulling preliminary data. Phone records, shared cloud access, keycard logs from the house. Miles eased himself into a chair carefully. Find me a timeline. Of the affair? Of the strategy? Beverly's eyes narrowed. You think this was strategic? I don't assume coincidence. She nodded once. I'll need access to the home security archive. You have it. And financial back tracing? Already begun. She hesitated slightly. Do you want proof for divorce proceedings or something else? Miles looked toward the harbor again. Truth first. Application later. Beverly closed the folder softly. Understood. After she left, silence returned to the suite. Ryan adjusted the medication schedule on his tablet. You're mobilizing fast. Yes. You should be sleeping. I will. When there's structure. Ryan leaned back against the counter. Most people in your position would be grieving. I am. Ryan waited. For illusion, Miles clarified. That evening, he reviewed initial phone logs Beverly had sent digitally. Frequent calls to a number saved under a fitness brand name. Timestamps during court sessions. Encrypted messaging app downloads. He enlarged one file. Property access logs from the Beacon Hill residence. Dominic Walsh's keycard entry began 8 months before he officially became Veronica's trainer, earlier than publicly acknowledged. Miles' jaw tightened slightly, not from anger, from confirmation. He scrolled further. Credit card authorizations for boutique hotels inside the city. Midday reservations. Weekdays. When he was in court, he set the tablet down carefully. Ryan glanced over. "You look pale." "I look informed." "What did you find?" "A beginning." Ryan crossed his arms. "And what does that mean?" "It means this didn't start impulsively. Affairs rarely do. This one feels engineered." Ryan didn't respond immediately. "You're thinking like an attorney." "I am an attorney." "No," Ryan corrected gently. "You're thinking like a strategist." Miles considered that. Across the darkening harbor, lights flickered on one by one. Patterns. He had built his career identifying them. Witness inconsistencies. Financial discrepancies. Motives disguised as accidents. He reopened the tablet. Phone logs. Financial movements. Property access. Security footage. What began as betrayal quickly became pattern. And patterns were something Miles understood intimately. Chapter 4. The affair that preceded the heart attack. The first week in the Winthrop suite became a rhythm of analysis. Medication at 6. Short walk across the living room at 7. Data review by 8. Miles treated recovery like litigation, measured, structured, deliberate. Beverly arrived each morning with updates, her usual warmth replaced by sharpened efficiency. On the 4th day, she entered carrying 2 thick folders and a flash drive. "I think you were right," she said quietly, setting everything down on the glass table overlooking the harbor. "I usually am," Miles replied, though there was no humor in it. "This isn't random." He gestured for her to continue. She opened the first folder. Dominic Walsh, age 42. Fitness certification 10 years ago. No notable corporate clients until 3 years back. 3 years, Miles repeated. "Yes." She slid a document across the table. His LLC was incorporated on March 3rd. Miles glanced at it. Walsh Elite Performance, LLC. Registered in Massachusetts. 3 years ago. And the charity gala, he asked. April 7th. The Boston Children's Cardiac Benefit. He remembered that night. Veronica in a deep emerald gown. Laughter. Cameras. Donors. She had returned from the restroom, flushed and smiling. "You'll never believe who I ran into," she'd said. An old college friend. Dominic. At the time, Miles had smiled politely. College nostalgia was harmless. Or so he thought. He incorporated 1 month before that gala, Beverly said. No prior client base. No website traffic. No marketing. He positioned himself. Beverly nodded. Miles leaned back slowly, careful of the sutures beneath his shirt. The affair had not been impulsive. It had been architectural. "Dig into their college history," he said. "Already did." She handed him printed yearbook photos. Veronica, 21, radiant. Dominic beside her, lean, confident, arm draped comfortably around her shoulders. Dated 2 years, Beverly continued. He left abruptly senior year. Rumors of infidelity. No confirmed details. And 3 years ago, Miles said, he just happens to reappear. Yes. Ryan, who had been reviewing medication logs nearby, glanced up. That's not coincidence. No, Miles agreed. It's timing. Beverly opened the second folder. This is where it escalates. She laid out a spreadsheet of hotel reservations. 14 months. Discrete boutique locations inside Boston. Weekday afternoons. Miles scanned the dates. Many aligned precisely with long trial days. He could see the courtroom schedule in his mind, jury selection, expert testimony, closing arguments. While he dismantled prosecutions, they reserved rooms. Private accounts had been opened in Veronica's name 6 months after Dominic's LLC registration. Transfers routed through a fitness consulting retainer. Clean, layered, thoughtful. Encrypted messaging applications downloaded onto her phone 2 months later. Miles exhaled slowly. 14 months, he murmured. Minimum, Beverly corrected. That's just what we can verify. Ryan stepped closer. You're not surprised? I'm recalibrating. He flipped to another document. Security access logs from the Beacon Hill house. Dominic's keycard activation dated 8 months before he officially became her personal trainer. He wasn't hired yet, Miles said quietly. No, Beverly confirmed. But he had access. He pictured the layout of the house. The private gym in the renovated basement. The wine cellar. The office. Dominic had walked those rooms before ever presenting himself as a trainer. That's premeditated entry, Miles said. Ryan studied the documents. You think this was about money from the start? I think money was always relevant. Beverly hesitated. There's more. She slid a sealed envelope forward. This came from your healthcare provider. Miles' eyes sharpened. Ow! You authorized me as medical proxy years ago for emergencies. I requested access logs. He opened the envelope. A printout of portal access activity. User ID, Veronica Donovan. Login timestamps. Repeated entries into his cardiology records. 6 separate dates over the past year. 1 3 weeks before his collapse. Ryan stiffened. Why would she need that? Miles' pulse remained steady. They knew, he said. Knew what? Beverly asked, though her voice had lowered. He turned the page. Cardiac imaging reports. Notes on arterial blockage. A recommendation for lifestyle modification. Risk percentage highlighted in clinical language. They knew about my coronary blockages, Miles said. Ryan stepped back slightly. You told her? I mentioned elevated cholesterol, not severity. Beverly looked pale now. She accessed this without telling you. Yes. And Dominic? Miles looked toward the window, gray Atlantic stretching outward. They discussed it. The timeline assembled itself in his mind like a trial exhibit. Reconnection. Business formation. Access to the house. Affair begins. Private accounts. Encrypted communication. Medical record access. Then his heart attack. Ryan broke the silence. You're suggesting they were waiting. Miles didn't respond immediately. He replayed the night of the gala 3 years ago. The precise way Dominic had shaken his hand. Firm. Controlled. Slight smile. Mr. Donovan, I've heard impressive things. Predators often introduce themselves politely. Beverly's voice was tight. This isn't just adultery. No, it's calculation. Yes. He felt something cold settle beneath his sternum, colder than betrayal. This wasn't about passion. It was about trajectory. 14 months of hotel bookings, private accounts, encrypted messages, and then something colder. Veronica had accessed Miles' medical records multiple times before his collapse. They knew about his coronary blockages. They knew he was at risk. Miles leaned back in the hotel suite, overlooking the gray Atlantic. They hadn't just waited. They had planned. Chapter 5. The Performance of Remorse. It was just afternoon when the concierge called upstairs. Mr. Donovan, your wife is here. She says it's urgent. Miles didn't look away from the harbor. Gray water. Whitecaps forming under a tightening sky. Send her up. There was the faintest pause on the other end of the line. Yes, sir. He ended the call and closed the file in front of him. Ryan, standing near the kitchenette reviewing medication intervals, glanced over. You sure? Yes. Do you want me here? I want you present. Ryan nodded once and stepped into the adjacent sitting area, visible but unobtrusive. The knock came 5 minutes later. Not the confident rhythm Veronica once used in their own home. This one was tentative. Miles crossed the room slowly, aware of the pull in his chest, and opened the door. She stood there looking smaller than he remembered. No makeup, red eyes, hair pulled back loosely as though done in haste. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft. Miles, he stepped aside. She entered the suite cautiously, as if it might reject her. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. For a moment, neither spoke. She took in the minimalist furniture. The absence of familiarity. You didn't go home, she said. No, you left the hospital early. Yes. Her eyes flicked to the faint stiffness in his posture. You shouldn't be walking around like this. I am. Silence stretched. Then she exhaled shakily. I panicked, she said. Miles didn't respond. She stepped closer, clasping her hands together. When they told me you might not make it, I froze. Dominic was there, and he said maybe I should get away for a few days. Clear my head. He watched her carefully, the tremor in her lower lip, the calculated moisture in her eyes. I wasn't thinking clearly, she continued. I was overwhelmed. You boarded an international flight, Miles said evenly. That requires multiple deliberate steps. Her jaw tightened briefly before she masked it. I know how it looks. It looks precise. She flinched slightly. It wasn't like that, she insisted. He's manipulative. Dominic has always been manipulative. I was vulnerable. Miles said nothing. She moved toward the window, as if proximity to him required courage. I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? She hesitated. That's not fair. It's accurate. Her voice sharpened slightly. You've been distant for years. Always at work. Always in court. I felt invisible. You felt invisible during 14 months of hotel reservations? Her face drained of color. He walked to the table and picked up a thin folder. I thought, she began quickly. I thought we were just drifting. Dominic made me feel seen. Miles extended the folder toward her. She stared at it. What's that? Context. She took it slowly. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Hotel invoices. Transaction records. Security logs. Screenshots of encrypted chat metadata. 14 months. Financial trails. Property transfers. Encrypted chats. Her breathing changed. You went through my phone? She whispered. I verified you, he corrected calmly. Her eyes darted across the pages, widening with each line. You investigated me? I verified you. She looked up sharply. You had no right. I had every right. The silence that followed was different now. Not theatrical. Measured. Her shoulders straightened. You don't understand, she said quietly. Dominic. He told me you'd never let me leave with anything. That I'd be trapped. So you began building alternatives. That's not. Private accounts opened 6 months after he incorporated his company. She blinked. Yes, he continued evenly. I know when he incorporated it. You're twisting this. Am I? She closed the folder abruptly. I was scared. Of what? Of being alone. You were not alone. She laughed once sharp bitter. You think writing checks is presence. No, he said. I think loyalty is. Her eyes flashed. For a brief second, the softness dropped completely. You think you're so controlled, she said. So untouchable. I am controlled. That's the problem. He studied her. I almost died, he said quietly. Her mouth opened, then closed. You left while my chest was open. Tears welled again, but they seemed less certain now. I didn't think you would survive. She didn't answer. The silence filled the room like pressure. You said don't bother calling, he continued. So I didn't. She swallowed. I came back, she said, because your credit cards stopped working. Her composure fractured. That's not fair. It's precise. She stepped toward him, anger rising. You humiliated me. Theo called me screaming. Pamela, my mother, they're not my responsibility. They're family. They are yours. Her voice hardened. You're punishing everyone. No, he said. I'm disengaging. She stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. You can't just cut me out. I can. You're still my husband. For now. Her breath hitched. He walked back to the table and retrieved another document. The prenuptial agreement. Signed 12 years earlier. Revised 2 years into marriage. Airtight. You remember this, he said, placing it in front of her. Her hands shook as she skimmed it. This was in case of infidelity, she murmured. Yes. Her face paled further as she reached the clause. Liquidated settlement. Modest stipend. No claim to primary residence. No access to investment trusts. No leverage. This is nothing, she whispered. It's sufficient. You'd leave me with this? You left first. She looked up slowly. You're cold. I'm clear. The mask slipped fully now. The softness vanished. You think you've won, she said quietly. This isn't a game. You'll regret pushing me like this. I doubt that. Her eyes burned with something sharper than sadness. For the first time, anger replaced performance in her expression. She closed the folder and dropped it onto the table. You don't know everything, she said. No, he replied calmly. but I know enough. She turned without another word and walked toward the door. Her hand paused briefly on the handle, as if expecting him to stop her. He didn't. The door closed behind her. The room returned to stillness. Ryan stepped forward quietly. You okay? Yes. He walked back to the window. The Atlantic had darkened further, clouds rolling in from the horizon. Miles watched the harbor again. Storms were coming. He could feel it. Chapter 6, The Conservatorship Attack. The retaliation came 9 days later. Beverly arrived at the Winthrop suite earlier than usual, her composure tight, a legal envelope clutched in her hand. They filed, she said before she was fully inside. Miles was seated at the dining table overlooking the harbor, reviewing deposition notes from a pending case he had no intention of abandoning. He didn't look up immediately. Who is they? Veronica. That earned his eyes. She filed an emergency petition in probate court this morning. Ryan, who was checking his blood pressure cuff nearby, stilled slightly. For what? Miles asked evenly. Beverly handed him the envelope. Temporary conservatorship. The word hung in the air like something toxic. Miles opened the envelope carefully, ignoring the faint pull in his chest as he leaned forward. The petition was cleanly drafted, alarming in tone, emotionally persuasive. He read silently at first, then aloud. Petitioner asserts that respondent, Miles Donovan, has demonstrated erratic financial behavior, paranoia, and impaired judgment following recent cardiac trauma. He turned a page. Petitioner further asserts that respondent poses risk to his own estate and well-being due to diminished cognitive stability. Ryan's jaw tightened. They're saying you're unstable. Miles continued reading. She is requesting temporary emergency conservatorship over financial and medical decisions pending psychiatric evaluation. Beverly folded her arms. They want control. Miles flipped to the supporting affidavit. Signed, Dr. Philip Renault. Who is that? Ryan asked. Private cardiologist, Beverly answered. Consulted once at a charity event 2 years ago. Miles scanned the affidavit. Patients recovering from major cardiac events frequently exhibit mood instability, paranoia, impulsivity, and poor executive function. He stopped there. They're reframing your financial moves as delusion, Beverly said. Ryan leaned forward. You cut her off. Now, she's claiming you're not mentally competent to do it. Miles closed the document slowly. The retaliation came faster than expected. He did not sigh. He did not curse. He simply recalibrated. When is the hearing? He asked. Emergency review in 5 days. Judge. Marshall. Miles nodded once. Conservative. Detail-oriented. Not easily swayed by theatrics, but sympathetic to medical testimony. This is aggressive, Ryan said quietly. No, Miles replied. It's efficient. Beverly paced once near the window. She's claiming you're paranoid about being manipulated, that your suspicion of her is a symptom of trauma. Ryan glanced at Miles. That's strategic, Miles finished. He returned to the affidavit. Dr. Philip Renault's signature was crisp, clinical, confident. He's suggesting diminished executive function, Miles murmured. That's hard to disprove quickly, Beverly said. No, Miles replied calmly. It isn't. She looked at him. You intend to argue your own competency? I intend to dismantle theirs. Beverly exhaled slowly. There's more. She pulled out a second document. Dominic went to the firm yesterday. Miles' expression did not change. What did he want? He asked to speak with Stewart privately. And he implied that you were unraveling. Said you'd become obsessive. That the firm should prepare for reputational fallout. Ryan scoffed softly. He's trying to isolate you. Beverly nodded. He suggested that maybe Stewart should consider temporary oversight if you weren't yourself. Miles absorbed that without visible reaction. Dominic appearing at the firm was not emotional. It was procedural. He's reinforcing the narrative, Miles said quietly. Yes. Beverly's voice hardened. Security escorted him out. Good. Ryan crossed his arms. This is coordinated. Yes, Miles replied. He stood slowly, ignoring the strain in his sternum, and walked toward the window. The harbor was restless again, wind dragging lines across the water surface. They're attempting character reframing, he said. I cut financial access. They frame it as instability. I question motive. They call it paranoia. Beverly's voice lowered. If the judge grants temporary conservatorship, she controls everything. All accounts. All medical decisions, Ryan added. Yes, Miles said. And once she's in, Beverly continued, it's difficult to remove. Silence fell. The strategy was elegant. If she could not access his assets as a wife, she would control them as his legal guardian. Ryan stepped closer. You're not worried. I'm attentive. They're painting you as emotionally compromised. They're underestimating me. Beverly watched him carefully. You're recovering from surgery. This could be perceived as overexertion. Then we demonstrate stability. Ow! Miles turned back toward the table. Financial audits showing rational reallocation. Medical evaluations confirming cognitive clarity. Character affidavits from colleagues. He looked at Beverly. Prepare statements from 3 partners. Ryan added quietly, an independent neuro evaluation. Miles nodded. Schedule 1. Beverly hesitated. Do you think she believes this will work? She believes it will intimidate. And will it? Miles met her gaze. No, Ryan studied him. You're not angry, he observed. I don't need to be. You're not hurt. Miles considered that briefly. Hurt is inefficient. Beverly gathered the documents back into a neat stack. I'll coordinate counsel. I am counsel, Miles corrected gently. For this, she said firmly, you should not stand alone. A faint flicker of approval crossed his face. Very well. After she left, Ryan remained quiet for a long moment. Most people, Ryan said eventually, would see this as betrayal escalating. It is, but you're treating it like litigation. It is that too. Ryan leaned against the counter. You ever think maybe she believes you are unstable? Miles looked at him calmly. Do I appear unstable? No. Then perception is manageable. Ryan studied him for another moment. They think you're reacting emotionally. Miles picked up the petition again. They believed he was reacting emotionally. They misunderstood him entirely. Chapter 7, The Slow Poison. The first episode lasted less than 3 minutes. Miles was standing near the window of the Winthrop suite, reviewing a draft response to the conservatorship petition when the room shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. The harbor beyond the glass blurred at the edges. The horizon tilted slightly, as though the earth had exhaled unevenly. He gripped the back of a chair. A cold sheen spread across his skin. His pulse began to hammer, not fast but heavy. Ryan was across the room instantly. Sit down. I'm fine, Miles said, though his voice sounded distant even to himself. Ryan ignored him and guided him into the chair anyway. When did it start? 30 seconds ago. Chest tightening followed. Not sharp, not like the original heart attack. This was constricted, pressurized. Ryan checked his pulse. Irregular. It was stable this morning. I know. Sweat gathered at Miles' temples. His breathing shortened involuntarily. Ryan moved quickly, blood pressure cuff, pulse oximeter, medication tray. Did you miss a dose? Ryan asked. No. Take anything outside schedule? No. The episode eased as suddenly as it had begun. Miles leaned back slowly. Record it, he said. Ryan was already logging the vitals. Second abnormal reading this week, Ryan said quietly. Miles' eyes narrowed. Second, you had minor dizziness 2 nights ago. That was fatigue. Was it? Miles didn't answer. Over the next 2 days, the pattern repeated. Dizziness, cold sweats, chest tightening. Each episode brief. Each one just disruptive enough to raise concern. Ryan began double-checking everything. Medication times, dosage levels, diet, hydration, sleep. Nothing was out of alignment. Yet the instability persisted. On the 4th episode, Ryan's tone changed. This doesn't track. Miles, seated at the table reviewing financial statements, looked up. Explain. Ryan held up 2 pill containers. These are not evenly measured. They're pre-filled from the pharmacy. I know. Ryan opened 1 capsule carefully over a sterile pad. The powder inside wasn't uniform. That's not how these are manufactured, Ryan said. Miles watched closely. Ryan retrieved a 2nd capsule from a different day's batch. Opened it. Different consistency. Different density. That's contamination, Ryan said flatly. Miles felt something cold slide into place beneath his calm. From where? I don't know yet. Ryan collected several capsules, sealing them in sterile containers. We're sending these for independent testing. Miles nodded once. The next irregularity came from a different direction. Food. Miles had maintained a restricted cardiac diet since leaving the hospital. Meals delivered twice daily from a premium recovery-focused service. Ryan was reviewing invoices when he paused. Who arranged this? Veronica, Miles said, before I left the house. Ryan turned the tablet toward him. The service was managed under a corporate umbrella owned by a woman named Melody Price. The name lingered. Melody Price, Ryan repeated. Miles' jaw tightened slightly. Veronica's friend. Ryan looked up sharply. How close? Close enough. Ryan set the tablet down slowly. We need to test the food. They did. The results came back 48 hours later. Ryan stood near the window holding the printed lab sheet. His voice was controlled but tight. Microdoses of a beta-agonist compound. Miles remained seated. Effect. Destabilizes heart rhythm in small quantities. Causes anxiety-like symptoms. Sweating. Palpitations. Dizziness. Lethal. Not at these levels. Miles' eyes lifted. Escalatable. Yes. Silence expanded across the suite. How long? Miles asked. Ryan scanned the report. Traces found in 4 separate meal samples. Over 8 days. Miles did the math immediately. 8 days. The conservatorship hearing was 5 days away. Enough to make me appear erratic, Miles said quietly. Yes. Enough to support claims of cognitive instability. Ryan met his gaze. Yes. Miles stood slowly. No visible panic. No raised voice. Just recalibration. This was deliberate, Ryan said. Yes. And it started before the hearing. Yes. Ryan hesitated. You understand what this means. Miles walked toward the table and picked up the lab report himself. Microdoses. Carefully measured. Sustained but not fatal. This was no longer betrayal. It was attempted murder. And it had begun before the hearing. He looked up at Ryan. They needed physical evidence, he said calmly. Visible deterioration. Ryan's expression hardened. You could have gone into cardiac arrest. That would have been inconvenient. Inconvenient, Ryan repeated. Yes. Ryan stared at him. You're not reacting. I am. This doesn't look like reacting. It's strategic. Ryan stepped closer. We go to the police. Not yet. Ryan's disbelief was immediate. Not yet. If we move prematurely, we alert them. They're poisoning you. Yes. And you want to wait? I want proof. We have proof. We have trace contamination. I want sourcing. Chain of custody. Financial linkage. Ryan's jaw tightened. You're turning this into a case. It is a case. Ryan exhaled sharply. You nearly collapsed yesterday. And I didn't. Ryan studied him for a long moment. What are you thinking? Miles walked back to the window. The Atlantic was darker today. Wind carving sharp lines across the surface. They believe they're destabilizing me. They are. They believe it strengthens their conservatorship argument. Yes. Miles nodded slightly. Then we let them believe that. Ryan's eyes sharpened. You want to appear unstable? I want them confident. Ryan stared at him. That's dangerous. Yes. Why? Because confidence breeds exposure. Ryan crossed his arms slowly. You have something in mind. Miles turned from the window. His expression was no longer reflective. It was precise. I need surveillance on the delivery chain. I can arrange discrete toxicology monitoring. And I need digital tracing on Melody Price. Ryan's voice lowered. You're planning something. Yes. Ryan held his gaze. What are you calling it? Miles didn't hesitate. Plan Frost. Ryan frowned slightly. Frost. Cold environments preserve evidence, Miles said quietly. Ryan understood then. This wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It was containment. Miles did not panic. He activated something else. Plan Frost. Chapter 8, Plan Frost. The courtroom was quieter than a criminal trial. Probate hearings often were. No juries. No press crowding the back rows. Just polished wood, measured voices, and consequences wrapped in civility. But this one had an audience. Partners from Miles Donovan's firm sat stiffly along the wall. Several members of Veronica's family occupied the opposite side, whispering with tight expressions. At council table, Veronica sat dressed in soft blue. Conservative, understated. Her makeup was minimal, calculated vulnerability. A tissue rested delicately between her fingers. Beside her sat her attorney, Harrison Cole, a probate litigator known for emotional persuasion. Dr. Philip Renaud waited behind them, hands folded, expression solemn. The conservatorship hearing was designed as a performance. Judge Marshall adjusted his glasses and reviewed the petition. Mrs. Donovan, he began, you are requesting temporary conservatorship over your husband's estate and medical decision-making authority. Yes, Your Honor, Veronica said softly. Her voice trembled just enough. On what grounds? She inhaled as if steadying herself. Since his heart attack, Miles has been different, suspicious, erratic with finances. He's cut off long-standing obligations without explanation. He refuses medical rest. He believes I'm conspiring against him. A controlled pause. I'm worried for him. Across the room, several heads nodded sympathetically. Her attorney rose. Your Honor, cardiac trauma is well documented to cause cognitive impairment, impulsivity, paranoia. Mr. Donovan's recent financial actions are extreme and destabilizing. We fear he is no longer capable of protecting himself. Dr. Renaud took the stand next. He spoke with clinical authority. In my experience, post-cardiac patients frequently exhibit mood dysregulation. Executive function can be compromised, particularly in high-stress individuals. And Mr. Donovan, the attorney prompted, I reviewed his behavioral patterns as described by Mrs. Donovan. The abrupt restructuring of assets and isolation from family are consistent with post-operative psychological disturbance. Judge Marshall leaned back slightly. And you have personally examined Mr. Donovan? Renaud hesitated briefly. I have not conducted a formal in-person evaluation, but you are offering expert opinion. Yes, based on available behavioral reports. The judge made a note. Veronica dabbed her eyes gently. He won't even speak to me, she whispered. He thinks I'm trying to hurt him. The irony hung invisible. Judge Marshall steepled his fingers. Has Mr. Donovan been notified? Yes, Your Honor, Harrison Cole replied. He has chosen not to appear today. A murmur rippled faintly. It was a subtle move, suggesting avoidance. Instability. Judge Marshall nodded slowly. I will consider temporary oversight pending further evaluation. The courtroom doors opened. The sound echoed sharper than it should have. Every head turned. Beverly entered first, posture unshaken. Behind her, Stewart from the firm. Then Diana Booker, a private investigator with 20 years in financial crimes. Ryan followed last, expression composed. They approached the defense table without speaking. Harrison Cole frowned. Your Honor, Beverly addressed the bench calmly. Mr. Donovan submits evidentiary response. Judge Marshall adjusted his glasses again. Where is Mr. Donovan? He will arrive shortly. Harrison rose immediately. Your Honor, this is procedural disruption. The respondent chose not to attend. He has not waived appearance. Beverly corrected evenly. He delayed it. Diana Booker began distributing folders. Precise. Organized. Judge Marshall flipped open the first one. Forensic toxicology reports. Independent lab confirmations. Beta agonist. Microdosing across multiple meal samples. Judge Marshall's brow furrowed. What is this? Ryan stepped forward slightly. Medical contamination findings from Mr. Donovan's food supply. Harrison scoffed. Irrelevant. Diana slid another document forward. Financial transfers. Payments routed through shell accounts. One account linked to Dr. Philip Renaud's consulting firm. Judge Marshall looked up sharply. Dr. Renaud? Renaud shifted in his seat. I'm not familiar with 6 separate transfers, Diana said evenly, totaling $180,000 over 4 months. Harrison's voice tightened. Objection. This is a smear. Judge Marshall ignored him momentarily. Another folder. Offshore account registrations tied to Dominic Walsh. Asset redirection structures. Layered trusts. Then, printed text messages. Encrypted platform extracts recovered through subpoena. Highlighted phrases. When he finally drops, we just need him unstable long enough. The judge will side with concern. The courtroom shifted. The whispering stopped. Veronica's face lost its softness. She looked at Renaud. Renaud stared at the table. Judge Marshall's tone hardened. Mrs. Donovan, can you explain these communications? Veronica's lips parted. I don't know how. The doors opened again. This time, no hesitation. Miles Donovan entered. Healthy, composed, prepared. The stiffness in his posture was minimal now. Controlled recovery. Dark suit tailored perfectly. No tremor. No visible fragility. Every eye followed him as he walked toward the center aisle. He did not rush. He did not dramatize. He stopped before the bench. Your Honor. Judge Marshall regarded him carefully. Mr. Donovan, you appear stable. I am. Harrison tried to recover momentum. Your Honor, theatrics do not. They are not theatrics, Miles said calmly. Behind him, 2 federal agents stepped into the room. Badges visible. Authority unmistakable. Gasps broke across the gallery. One agent addressed the court. Your Honor, we have active warrants for Dominic Walsh and Dr. Philip Renaud on charges related to financial fraud and attempted poisoning. Veronica's hand dropped the tissue. Renaud stood abruptly. This is absurd. The agent stepped forward. Dr. Renaud, you are under arrest. The sound of cuffs closing echoed across the courtroom. Dominic Walsh, who had slipped quietly into the back row minutes earlier, attempted to move toward the side exit. The second agent intercepted him. Dominic Walsh? He didn't resist. He just stared at Miles. A thin, calculating look. On what grounds? Harrison demanded. The agent replied evenly. Forensic toxicology, financial conspiracy, and attempted homicide investigation. The word homicide landed heavily. Judge Marshall's expression hardened into something colder. This hearing, he said slowly, is adjourned pending criminal review. Veronica rose halfway from her chair. Miles, he did not look at her. He addressed the judge. Your Honor, I believe the petition speaks for itself. The courtroom was no longer sympathetic, no longer uncertain. It was silent and watching. The hearing transformed into an arrest. Chapter 9. The Predator Behind the Curtain. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that carries its own weight. Miles Donovan sat across from the FDA agent in a private conference room at the federal building, the late afternoon sun cutting sharp lines across the polished oak table. He had spent weeks piecing together the financial, medical, and behavioral evidence, but this was confirmation, the missing piece. Agent Larkin didn't waste words. He laid a file in front of Miles, sliding it across with a measured hand. You wanted proof of pattern. Here it is. Miles opened the folder slowly, his gaze sweeping each document with professional detachment. The handwriting was impeccable, typed in columns, dates, and transactions meticulously noted. Bank transfers, flight manifests, hotel reservations, medical records, all curated to reveal a chilling repetition. You'll notice, Larkin continued, Dominic Walsh is consistent. He's not a lover. He's a predator. Miles' eyes flicked to the word and back to the pages. 3 cases? Yes. 3 previous spouses. Each married into wealth. Each with vulnerabilities he exploited. All seemingly ordinary marital dissatisfaction stories until they collapsed. Collapse. Miles' voice was steady but lethal in its calmness. Heart attacks? Accidents? Yes. Slow. Gradual. Microdoses of toxins over months. Symptoms mimic stress, cardiac decline, and in some cases cognitive decline. The wives were complicit, not aware, but complicit by proxy. He manipulated them. Miles leaned back, letting the information settle. His mind reconstructed the familiar narrative. Financial transfers, secrecy, private accounts, hospital access. Veronica's behavior suddenly aligned perfectly with this pattern. So Veronica, Miles said carefully, she wasn't special? No, Larkin replied. She was next. He's methodical. She fit the criteria. Access to wealth, fragile ego, capable of following instruction. Miles' gaze hardened. He could see it now in 3 dimensions. Dominic's charm, the calculated approach, the early chance encounters, the charity gala, the gym incorporation, the hotel bookings. All architectural, all deliberate. Veronica's panic, her flight, part of the choreography. She was simply a tool, a placeholder until he could inherit what he couldn't obtain himself. Larkin continued. Look at the pattern. Target wealthy spouse. Reintroduce self under pretense of friendship or professional service. Gain trust. Isolate the spouse. Begin subtle medical interference. Asset control. Wife becomes unwitting accomplice. Then discard the wife. Final acquisition of assets. Miles' jaw tightened. He hadn't needed this confirmation to act, but made the precision of his response all the more satisfying. Every move he had made, blocking accounts, freezing assets, monitoring food, planned frost, was calibrated. This was not revenge. This was survival and justice. And the previous victims? Miles asked. All deceased, Larkin said, tone clinical. Heart attacks staged as natural, sudden events. In each case, the wife was either financially compensated or left with a minor inheritance to avoid suspicion. Dominic's reputation remained intact in every circle. Miles allowed a slow exhale. And Veronica would have been next, had I not interfered. Exactly. Larkin's face was stern. This is why the toxicology reports, financial tracing, and the coordinated arrests are so important. We need to show it's a system, not an isolated incident. Miles nodded once. Understand. His hand rested on the file. So the marriage, the affair, the apparent betrayal, it was all a setup to execute the same pattern. Yes, she didn't know she was part of a blueprint. She thought it was love, manipulation, escape. She was the same as the others. Miles' eyes narrowed. He pictured Veronica in the hotel suite, the red-rimmed eyes, the soft voice, the performance of panic and regret. She had been reacting perfectly according to the plan, unaware she was a cog in a machine designed to kill him and take his fortune. He stood, pacing slowly. Predators rarely leave gaps. He left one here. He tapped the file. I'm the anomaly. I recognize the architecture. I disrupted the cycle. Larkin observed him quietly. Yes, that's why we're taking him into custody today. The courtroom later that morning was tense, the air electric with anticipation. Veronica sat behind the petitioner's table, stiff and pale. Her attorney fidgeted with papers, unease visible now that the narrative had collapsed. Dr. Renaud, once authoritative, now looked fragile, almost desperate. Miles entered calmly, flanked by federal agents. Every step measured, every line of his body composed. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He did not glance at Veronica. The agents moved efficiently, stepping forward toward Dominic, who had been seated inconspicuously in the back. His expression was unervingly calm, almost bored. No panic, no flinching. Predators rarely panic when caught. Agent Larkin read the warrant aloud. Dominic Walsh, you are under arrest for attempted homicide, financial fraud, and conspiracy. Dominic's eyes flicked briefly to Miles, a thin smirk forming. Interesting, he said softly, almost conversational. Your rights, the agent continued. You may remain silent. Dominic stood slowly, hands raised briefly, then allowed the handcuffs to be applied. He made no attempt to resist. The courtroom watched in stunned silence. The layers of deception, the affair, the betrayal, the attempted murder, the financial manipulations collapsed in a single coordinated moment. Veronica's lips parted, words failing to form. The soft panic she had rehearsed melted into raw confusion. Dr. Renaud's face paled as he realized the forensic reports tied directly back to him. Miles remained seated, calm, composed. He observed quietly as the predators were escorted from the room. His body, his mind, his strategy all intact. Larkin turned to him quietly afterward. You disrupted a pattern that could have continued indefinitely. I did what had to be done, Miles said simply. Do you feel relief? Miles' expression was neutral. I feel clarity. Outside the courtroom, reporters and cameras gathered, but Miles moved past them without comment. No sound, no gesture. He was finished with spectacle. Inside, Dominic was guided down the steps, maintaining composure. The same precision, the same control, the same predator's calm. Now confronted with boundaries he could not manipulate. Miles watched from a distance, hands folded. Justice had its finality. The cycle of manipulation, betrayal, and destruction had been interrupted. Veronica, still seated, looked toward him. Her eyes searched for anger, for revenge, for vindication. But there was none. Only clarity. Only understanding that she had been one step away from destruction. Miles finally exhaled. He had survived. Not just the heart attack. Not just the betrayal. Not just the slow poison. He had survived a predator. Dominic Walsh was under arrest in open court. His expression remained calm. Predators rarely panic when caught. Chapter 10, Sentencing in Silence. The courtroom felt colder than usual that morning. Winter had crept into Boston with icy wind gusting against the tall windows. The walls, polished oak and marble, carried the weight of history and judgment. Miles Donovan entered without ceremony, his steps measured, his dark suit immaculate. He did not glance at Veronica as she was escorted in. Her eyes, rimmed red from sleepless nights and public exposure, flicked toward him briefly. He did not return her gaze. The judge cleared the room of all but the essential parties. Reporters, gallery, and spectators had been asked to wait outside. Silence settled, heavy and expectant. The culmination of months of evidence, planning, and betrayal now demanded its verdict. Dominic Walsh sat beside his public defender, his expression unreadable. Calm, controlled. His hands rested lightly on his knees, almost serene. He had been the predator behind the curtain, and now the curtain had been pulled back entirely. The prosecution laid out the case again in concise terms, but no dramatic flourish was needed. The toxicology reports, financial tracing, encrypted communications, and documented manipulations spoke louder than any impassioned plea. Each piece had been meticulously organized, the narrative airtight. Your Honor, the lead prosecutor began, the defendant, Dominic Walsh, orchestrated the deaths of 3 individuals, attempted to poison Mr. Donovan, and conspired to manipulate multiple parties for financial gain. His actions demonstrate premeditation, callousness, and a complete disregard for human life. Veronica sat silently behind her attorney, who shifted nervously. She had been convicted of conspiracy and attempted murder. 15 years. She pressed her lips together, tried to maintain composure, yet her hands trembled slightly. I believed him, she whispered during her brief statement to the court, her voice barely audible. I didn't realize it. I didn't understand. Miles observed her quietly. There was no satisfaction in seeing her diminished, no relish in her sentencing. The betrayal had been personal, but the resolution was clinical. Facts were facts. Consequences were consequences. He did not need to express triumph. He did not need to offer moral judgment aloud. Precision had spoken for him. When Dominic's sentencing was read, it was brief and absolute. Life without parole. Multiple counts of murder. The words were punctuated by the sound of the gavel. Dominic's expression did not waver. He allowed the order to be acknowledged and escorted from the courtroom with the same composure he had maintained from the moment he was apprehended. Miles exhaled slowly. The room felt lighter, yet there was no emotional release. No cheer, no tears, just the quiet closure of systems resolved. Outside the courthouse, the winter wind cut through his overcoat, sharp against his chest, reminding him of the fragility of life. He did not linger. He did not speak to reporters. He walked directly to his car, accompanied by Beverly and Ryan, both maintaining discreet distance. 6 months later, he stood in a newly renovated cardiac wing at a major Boston hospital. The sunlight glinted off polished floors, reflecting a space that was both modern and intentionally calming. Each room had been designed to minimize stress, to promote recovery, and to provide the highest quality care for patients who, like him, had faced life-altering cardiac events. Ryan Lambert, who had been at his side since the first emergency in the Winthrop Suite, now directed the facility. His professionalism had grown into leadership, overseeing patient care, staff coordination, and research initiatives. He moved past Miles briefly, adjusting a monitor and checking on a recovering patient. Beverly remained at the firm, ensuring the legacy of Miles' legal practice continued, balancing complex cases with meticulous oversight. She had been instrumental in uncovering evidence, coordinating with authorities, and maintaining operational precision. Her presence reminded Miles that loyalty, when genuine, was rare and invaluable. Miles himself returned to work, slowly, deliberately, taking on pro bono cases. He focused on restoring the estates of Dominic Walsh's previous victims, ensuring financial and legal closure for families who had been exploited and abandoned. Each case was approached methodically, every document cross-checked, every transaction audited. The satisfaction he felt was not emotional. It was calculated. Each success was a restoration of order, a measure of control restored to chaos. He walked through the corridors of the cardiac wing one afternoon, observing the patients, nurses, and staff. He lingered briefly at a window overlooking the harbor, where winter waves churned relentlessly. He allowed himself a moment of reflection, not sorrow, not triumph, just acknowledgement. His own heart had failed him once, but the precision of his preparation, observation, and action had prevented another tragedy. No one could manipulate him again, not through deception, not through affection, not through fear. Love had proven itself insufficient as protection. Loyalty, understanding, and calculated attention were the only safeguards he would ever trust. The scent of antiseptic and the quiet hum of monitors filled the space, but they were not oppressive. They were reminders of life, of survival, of systems functioning correctly. Miles' thoughts returned to the courtroom, the arrests, the dismantling of a pattern that had nearly claimed him. Nothing had been left to chance. Everything had been anticipated. Everything had been accounted for. Beverly joined him briefly in the hallway. Everything's in place here. Ryan's doing an excellent job. I know, Miles said. And you? Back at the firm, monitoring the remaining trusts and estates. Dominic's ripple effects will take months to finalize, but it's all contained. Good, Miles replied. His gaze returned to the harbor. Containment. Precision. That's how it ends. A young cardiac patient was wheeled past in a wheelchair, smiling faintly at Ryan as he adjusted the child's fore. Miles watched without intrusion, noting the calm efficiency, the restoration of order. No emotion required. Systems working as designed. Later, in his private office at the foundation, Miles reviewed a file on the next pro bono estate he would oversee. Names, dates, bank accounts, documents, notes, every detail accounted for. The process itself was almost soothing, a rhythm of control over variables that had once threatened to overwhelm him. He paused briefly, pressing a hand to his chest. No pain, no weakness, no betrayal could reach him here. He closed his eyes for a single moment, drawing a steady breath. Miles Donovan did not feel triumph. He did not feel sorrow. He felt precision, measured, exact, absolute. He looked out the window at Boston Harbor, where the waves collided relentlessly against the pier. Just as life had once battered him, he would now endure with awareness, with vigilance, and with calculated clarity. His heart had failed once. It would not fail him again, and he would never mistake love for loyalty.